47 species had gathered to watch humanity fall. Ambassador David Wright could feel their eyes on him from every direction. The council chamber was built like a pit, with the accused standing at the bottom while hundreds of alien representatives looked down from rising platforms. It was designed to make anyone standing in the center feel small and trapped. Wright stood alone. His assistant, Lieutenant Anna Reyes, waited at the edge of the chamber with the other human delegates. They looked worried. Wright kept his face calm. High Chancellor Drothax of the Kalori species rose from his seat. He was 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales, and his voice echoed through the chamber like rolling thunder. "We are here today to address the matter of human cowardice," Drothax announced. 3 times the Galactic Council has requested human military support. 3 times humanity has refused. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Wright took out a small pad and began taking notes. He did not look up. "When the Vorn Syndicate threatened the outer colonies, we asked humans to join the coalition strike force," Drothax continued. "They refused. When the Nexera border conflict erupted, human ships were in position to flank the enemy. Instead, they retreated. When the trade routes needed protection, humans sent medical vessels instead of warships." Admiral Garath, the Kalori military commander, slammed his fist on his platform. Medical vessels, while real warriors bled and died. The chamber erupted in angry agreement. Species that had fought beside each other for centuries shouted their support for Drothax. Wright continued writing notes. A Branaki delegate stood up. His species resembled large insects with too many eyes. "Human ships are a joke among our fleet. They call them rescue boats with guns. More bandages than bullets." Laughter rippled through the hostile crowd. A Torvani representative joined in. "We have seen their budget reports. They spend more on hospitals than weapons. What kind of species does this?" "A weak one," someone shouted from the upper platforms. "Prey animals pretending to be predators." More laughter. More jeers. Wright kept writing. Lieutenant Reyes moved closer to the edge of the chamber. She caught Wright's eye and made a small gesture, asking if she should interrupt. Wright shook his head slightly. "Not yet." Drothax raised his clawed hand, and the chamber fell silent. He looked down at the lone human with obvious disgust. "Ambassador Wright, you have heard the charges against your species. Humanity has repeatedly shown itself unwilling to fight. You hide behind words like diplomacy and negotiation, but we know the truth. You are afraid." Wright did not respond. He turned a page in his notepad. "Your species negotiated peace with the Vorn instead of crushing them," Drothax said. "You offered trade agreements to enemies who should have been destroyed. You pulled your ships back from battles you could have won." Counselor Yeneth, an elder of the insectoid Mivari species, leaned forward. Unlike the Kalori, the Mivari were known for cold logic rather than hot blood. "The Kalori accusations are documented," Yeneth said. "Human military participation has declined every cycle for the past decade. Because fighting is not the only way to solve problems," Reyes called out from the edge. Several species turned to look at her with surprise. Drothax laughed. It was not a kind sound. "The young human speaks of solutions. What solution did diplomacy provide when the Branaki colonies burned? What solution did your medical ships offer when the Torvani lost 3 cruisers?" Wright finally looked up from his notes. His face was still calm, but something had shifted in his eyes. "I propose," Drothax announced to the full council, "that humanity be officially designated a non-combat species. They will lose their voting rights on all military matters. They will be removed from strategic planning sessions. They will be labeled what they truly are: cowards who cannot be trusted when blood must be spilled." Cheers erupted from the warrior species. The Kalori stomped their feet in approval. Even some of the neutral species nodded along. Reyes looked at Wright with growing panic. This designation would cripple humanity's position in the council. They would become political outsiders, unable to influence any decision involving force. "Ambassador Wright," Drothax called down, his voice dripping with false courtesy. "Do you have anything to say in response to these charges? Or does humanity accept its shame in silence?" The chamber grew quiet. Every eye focused on the single human standing in the pit. Wright closed his notepad. He looked at the faces surrounding him, the angry warriors, the curious neutrals, the silent observers. In the far corner, he noticed a figure he had not seen speak in over a decade of council sessions. Observer Paleth of the ancient Sindari species was watching him with unusual interest. Wright took a slow breath. "High Chancellor," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "May I request one standard hour to prepare my formal response?" Drothax's reptilian face twisted into a sneer. 1 hour? The great human diplomat needs time to find his courage. More laughter from the crowd. 1 hour. Wright repeated calmly. Drothax waved his clawed hand dismissively. "Granted. Take your hour, human. It will not save you. When you return, you will either defend your species or accept your designation. There is no third option." Wright nodded once, then turned and walked toward the chamber exit. Reyes fell into step beside him, questions burning in her eyes. Behind them, the council chamber buzzed with confident predictions of human humiliation. Drothax accepted congratulations from his allies. Admiral Garath was already drafting the official designation documents. None of them noticed that Wright was not walking like a defeated man. He was walking like someone who had just been given permission to speak. The door to the human delegation chamber sealed shut behind them, and immediately everyone started talking at once. "Sir, we need to show them our weapons capabilities," said one junior diplomat, pulling up files on his screen. "The classified stuff. Let them see what our destroyers can actually do." No, we challenged Drothax directly," another argued. "There are old council rules about single combat. If he loses, the motion dies." "Are you insane? He would tear Wright apart in 30 seconds. Then we find another champion. Someone younger, trained for combat." Lieutenant Reyes pushed through the arguing crowd to reach Wright, who had walked to the window and stood looking out at the stars. He had not spoken since leaving the chamber. "Ambassador," she said quietly, "what do you need?" Wright did not turn around. "How long have we been council members, Anna?" 12 years, sir. "And in those 12 years, how many species have called us cowards?" Reyes thought about it. "A few. Mostly the Kalori and their allies. But never this publicly. They think they know what we are." Wright finally turned to face her. His expression was strange, not angry or afraid, but heavy with something she did not recognize. "They have decided humans are weak because we choose not to fight. I need to show them why that choice is not weakness." "How?" "They have already made up their minds. By telling them the truth." Wright looked at the arguing diplomats behind them. Everyone stopped talking. The room fell silent. "I am not going to show them our weapons," Wright said. "I am not going to challenge anyone to combat. I am not going to prove we can fight." He paused. "I am going to prove why we do not." The diplomats exchanged confused glances. "Anna," Wright continued, "I need you to compile data for me. Very specific data." Reyes grabbed her tablet. "What kind of data?" "Start with our wars. All of them. Every conflict humans have ever fought against other humans. I want casualty numbers." Reyes stopped writing. "Against other humans?" "Our internal wars. All of them. World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the civil wars, the genocides, the ethnic cleansings. Every single death we caused to our own species." The room had gone very quiet. "Then I want the weapons data. Not our current weapons. The old ones. The nuclear arsenals we built during the Cold War. How many warheads we had pointed at our own cities. How many times we almost used them." "Sir," one of the junior diplomats said slowly, "why would we show them our worst moments? They already think we are weak. This will make us look like monsters." "That is exactly the point," Wright said. His voice was calm, but his eyes held something dark. "They think we are cowards because we will not fight. They need to understand we will not fight because we know exactly what happens when we do." Reyes was staring at her tablet. "You want to show them the Holocaust? The atomic bombs? The Rwandan genocide? All of it. Every horror our species has ever committed against itself. They will think we are insane," she whispered. "Perhaps, but they will not think we are weak." Wright walked to the center of the room. "Humans are not a peaceful species, Anna. We are a violent species that has learned the cost of violence. There is a difference. The Council does not understand that difference. I am going to teach them." A soft chime sounded at the door. Reyes checked the security monitor, and her eyes widened. "Sir, it is Observer Paleth. The Sindari." Wright raised an eyebrow. The Sindari almost never initiated contact with other species. They observed, recorded, and said nothing. Paleth had not spoken in council sessions for longer than most species had been members. "Let them in," Wright said. The door opened and Paleth entered. The Sindari were tall and thin, with pale gray skin that seemed to shift colors slightly depending on the light. Their eyes were large and completely black, giving nothing away. Ambassador Wright, Paleth said. Their voice was soft and musical. May we speak privately? Wright nodded to the others, who reluctantly filed out of the room. Reyes hesitated at the door, but Wright gestured for her to stay. When they were alone, Paleth moved closer. We have watched your species for longer than you know, Ambassador. Since before you left your planet. Wright did not seem surprised. Why are you telling me this? Because the Council is about to make a mistake. They believe they are judging the weak. They do not understand what they are actually facing. Paleth's dark eyes seemed to look through Wright rather than at him. Show them what you truly fear, Ambassador. Not what you are capable of. What you fear becoming. How do you know what we fear? Because we have seen it. Paleth moved toward the door. You are not the first species to carry monsters inside them. You are simply the first to build chains for yours. Make the Council understand what happens if those chains break. Paleth left without another word. Reyes stared at the closed door. What did that mean? Wright was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned back to the window, looking out at the stars where thousands of alien species waited to judge humanity. It means we are going to tell them the truth, he said softly. All of it. He held up his hand. Reyes noticed it was shaking slightly. Finish compiling the data, Wright said. We have 30 minutes. And in the silence of that room, David Wright began to prepare himself for the hardest speech of his life. Not because he was afraid of the Council, but because he was afraid of what he was about to reveal about his own species. The Council chamber doors opened, and silence spread like a wave across the assembled species. Something had changed. David Wright walked back into the pit at the center of the room, but he moved differently now. The polite, careful diplomat they had mocked an hour ago was gone. In his place was a man who carried weight in his shoulders and shadow in his eyes. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They could not explain why, but the human suddenly made them nervous. Lieutenant Reyes followed 3 steps behind, carrying a data tablet. She looked pale. High Chancellor Drothax rose from his platform, his scales catching the light. The human returns. I hope you have prepared your surrender speech, Ambassador. The Council is eager to finish this matter. A few species laughed, but the sound was thinner than before. Something about Wright's entrance had changed the atmosphere. Wright reached the center of the pit and stopped. He looked up at the ring of alien faces surrounding him. Kalori warriors, Bernaki merchants, Turvani fighters, Mavari thinkers, and in the shadows, the ancient Sindari observer. Thank you for your patience, High Chancellor, Wright said. His voice was calm, but it carried a new edge. I am ready to respond to your accusations. Then respond, Drothax said impatiently. Explain why your species runs from every fight. Wright nodded slowly. Before I do, I would like permission to display holographic records from human archives. Drothax waved his clawed hand. Granted. Show us your military victories, Ambassador. Prove you are warriors. If you can. I will not be showing victories, Wright said quietly. That got the chamber's attention. Murmurs spread through the platforms. Wright touched his wrist device, and the air above him flickered to life with projected images. The Council expected ships, weapons, perhaps famous battles. Instead, they saw hell. The first image showed a vast field of mud. Thousands of human bodies lay twisted in the dirt, tangled in barbed wire. Explosions had torn the ground into craters filled with water and blood. This is called the Psalm, Wright said. One battle, 100 years before we left Earth. In a single day, my species killed 20,000 of our own. The chamber had gone very quiet. The image changed. Now it showed a city, or what had been a city. Nothing remained but flattened rubble and ash. A single shadow was burned into a wall where a human had been standing when they were vaporized. This was Hiroshima, Wright continued. We built a weapon that could destroy an entire city in less than 1 second. Then we used it. On ourselves. Drothax's confident expression had begun to falter. What is the meaning of this? Why are you showing us this? Wright ignored him. The images kept changing. Mass graves. Concentration camps. Burning villages. Fields of skulls. This was the Holocaust. 6 million dead. This was Rwanda. 800,000 dead in 100 days. This was Cambodia. This was Armenia. This was the American Civil War. This was the 30 Years' War. Each image was worse than the last. Species that had never seen anything like this stared in growing horror at a Branaki delegate stood up. Stop this. We asked about your military capabilities, not your atrocities. You asked why we do not fight, Wright said. I am showing you. The hologram shifted to show a mushroom cloud rising over an ocean. This is a nuclear weapons test. At our peak, my species had enough nuclear warheads pointed at ourselves to destroy every city on our planet 12 times over. 12 times. Counselor Yeneth of the Mavari spoke for the first time. Why would any species build such excess? Because we could not stop. Because once we start fighting, we do not know how to stop. Wright's voice was growing heavier. You call us cowards because we choose diplomacy over combat. You mock us for sending medical ships instead of warships. You think we are afraid to fight. He looked directly at Drothax. High Chancellor, humans are not afraid to fight. We are afraid of what we become when we do. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the hostile species had stopped jeering. Wright gestured, and the holographic display settled on a single final image. A child, small and thin, dressed in ragged military clothing. The child was holding a rifle nearly as long as they were tall. Their eyes were empty. This is a human child soldier, Wright said quietly. 10 years old, armed and trained to kill other humans. This is what happens when our species gives in to violence. We do not just fight. We turn our own children into weapons. No one spoke. No one moved. Wright looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. Warriors who had never seen anything like human history. Species who fought their enemies but never imagined destroying themselves. You wanted to understand human cowardice, Wright said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. This is your answer. We are not cowards because we cannot fight. We are not cowards because we are afraid of you. He took one step forward, and the nearest council members leaned back involuntarily. We are cowards because we have seen what we truly are, and we are terrified of letting it out again. The silence stretched on. The images of human horror hung in the air above the lone figure in the pit. Finally, Drothax found his voice. You think showing us your shame will change our minds? Wright looked up at him with tired eyes. That was not my shame, High Chancellor. That was my warning, and I am not finished. The holographic images of human destruction still floated above the council chamber. No one had asked Wright to turn them off. No one seemed able to look away. Wright let the silence stretch for a long moment. Then he spoke again. In 10,000 years of recorded history, humans have experienced only 268 years of total peace. Not centuries of peace. Not generations. Scattered years, never more than a few at a time, spread across our entire existence. Counselor Yeneth's antennae twitched. Your species has been at war with itself for that long. Longer. We simply did not start writing it down until 10,000 years ago. Wright dismissed the holographic display with a gesture. The images faded, but their memory remained. In that time, humans have killed over 1 billion of our own kind in organized conflict. Not enemies. Not other species. Ourselves. The number hung in the air. Several species began calculating what such a death toll would mean for their own populations. The results were unthinkable. We developed weapons capable of ending all life on our planet, Wright continued. And we came within minutes of using them. Multiple times. Not because we were attacked by outside forces. Because we were angry at each other. Drothax had been quiet, but now he stepped forward on his platform. This proves nothing except that humans are unstable. Perhaps we should contain you rather than simply demote you. You are missing the point, High Chancellor. Wright's voice hardened. I am not telling you this to earn your pity or your fear. I am telling you this so you understand why we choose peace. He began walking slowly around the pit, making eye contact with species on every level. Humans did not develop diplomacy because we were too weak to fight. We developed it because we had to. Our survival depended on learning to stop ourselves. Every treaty we write, every negotiation we conduct, every war we refuse to join is not cowardice. It is the hardest thing we do. Hard. Admiral Garath laughed harshly. Talking is hard. Writing documents is hard. You insult true warriors. Wright stopped and faced the Kalori Admiral directly. Tell me, Admiral, how many Kalori have killed other Kalori in war? Garath's scales flushed darker with pride. Almost none. We fight external enemies. We do not waste our strength on internal conflict. That is why you think courage means fighting, Wright said quietly. You have never had to learn the courage it takes to stop. The chamber went still. Every human carries the capacity for extraordinary violence, Wright continued. We do not train it out of our soldiers. We cannot. Instead, we spend years teaching them when not to use it. Our military academies spend more time on rules of engagement than on weapons training. Not because we are weak. Because without those rules, we would never stop. Lieutenant Reyes stepped forward, her tablet ready. Ambassador, the council requested specific data. Wright nodded. Show them. New figures appeared in the air. Combat statistics, psychological profiles, training records. When humans enter combat, Reyes said, her voice steady despite her nerves, our neurological response is extreme. Adrenaline levels spike to rates that would kill most species. Our pain tolerance increases to dangerous levels. We become faster, stronger, and more aggressive than baseline measurements suggest possible. This sounds like an advantage, a Torvani delegate said. It is, until the fighting stops. Reyes pulled up more data. Human soldiers have to be specifically trained to accept enemy surrender. Our instinct, once activated, is not victory. It is annihilation. Without extensive conditioning, human fighters do not stop at winning. They continue until there is nothing left to fight. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. This is built into our biology, Wright said. We evolved on a death world, competing against predators for millions of years. The humans who survived were the ones who did not just defend themselves. They were the ones who eliminated threats completely. He moved back to the center of the pit and looked up at Drothax. You call us cowards because we will not help you fight your wars. You should thank whatever gods your species worships that we keep saying no. Because the day humanity stops holding back is the day this galaxy learns what a predator species with intelligence and nuclear weapons truly looks like. Drothax's claws had extended slightly, an involuntary threat response. Is that a threat, Ambassador? No, it is a fact. Wright did not flinch. I am not threatening you. I am explaining why we work so hard to never become a threat. Because we know what we are. We know what we could do. And we choose, every single day, to be something better. He turned to address the full council. You think choosing peace makes us weak. You think refusing to fight makes us cowards. But fighting is easy for us. It is natural. It is what our bodies and minds were built for. Wright's voice rose slightly. Choosing not to fight when every instinct screams at us to destroy our enemies. That is the hardest thing humans have ever learned to do. And we have to learn it again every single day. The chamber was completely silent. No jeers. No laughter. No confident predictions of human weakness. Wright stood alone in the pit, surrounded by species that were only now beginning to understand what humanity truly was. Not a weak species pretending to be strong. A dangerous species desperately trying to be peaceful. You asked for my response to your accusations, Wright said. There it is. We are not cowards. We are recovering addicts. And the substance we are addicted to is war. For a long moment, no one in the council chamber moved. Then several things happened at once. Admiral Garatha's hand had moved to his weapon without his conscious decision. He noticed it there and slowly forced his fingers to release the grip. Counselor Yeneth was rapidly processing information, their multiple eyes scanning data feeds faster than any other species could follow. That a Branaki delegate had risen from their seat and was backing toward the exit, their many legs carrying them away from the human in the pit. And in the shadows, Observer Paleth smiled. High Chancellor Drothax tried to regain control of the situation. This changes nothing. You have simply proven that humans are dangerous in a different way. Unstable. Uncontrollable. On the contrary, Yeneth spoke up, drawing attention from across the chamber. The data Ambassador Wright has presented is accurate. I have cross-referenced it with our own archives. You have records of human history, Drothax demanded. We have records of many species. The Mivari believe in complete information. Yeneth's antennae moved in patterns that suggested deep thought. What I find most significant is not the violence itself, but how humans classify their own past. Wright tilted his head slightly. What do you mean? Most species celebrate their military victories. They build monuments to conquest. They name their children after great warriors. Yeneth turned to face the full council. Humans do the opposite. They build memorials to their dead. They teach their children about their atrocities as warnings. They classify their own history as collective trauma. The chamber buzzed with confused murmurs. There is no other known species that actively teaches its young to be ashamed of its past, Yeneth continued. Humans do not hide their history. They force every generation to confront it. They make their children visit places where genocide occurred. They require their students to study their own capacity for evil. Drothax slashed his clawed hand through the air. This proves nothing except that humans are psychologically damaged. They are not fit to serve on this council. I disagree. A new voice silenced the chamber instantly. Observer Paleth had risen from their seat. Every species present turned in shock. The Sindari had not spoken in council sessions in over a decade. Some younger delegates had never heard their voice at all. Paleth moved slowly down from their platform, their pale gray form seeming to float rather than walk. They stopped at the edge of the pit, looking down at Right. We have watched humanity for 200 of your years, Paleth said. Their voice was soft, but carried to every corner of the chamber. Since before you achieved faster-than-light travel. Since before you knew other species existed. Right looked up at the ancient being. Why? Because you interested us. Most species, when they discover they are not alone in the universe, react with either fear or aggression. Humans reacted with something else. Hope. Paleth turned to face the council. When humans learned they were not alone, their first question was not how to defend themselves or how to conquer others. Their first question was whether they could make friends. Drothax made a sound of disgust. Sentiment. Weakness. No. Paleth's dark eyes fixed on the Kalori High Chancellor. Wisdom. Because humans knew something that you do not, Drothax. They knew that they could not survive another large-scale war. They knew that if they treated the galaxy the way they had treated each other, they would eventually destroy themselves. The Sindari do not involve themselves in council politics, a Torvani delegate called out. Why speak now? Because you are about to make a mistake that cannot be undone. Paleth's voice hardened slightly. Humans are not the species you should fear. They are the species you should want on your side. Because they have learned what no other species in this council has ever had to learn. And what is that? Drothax demanded. How to stop. Paleth gestured toward Right. This human has shown you what his species is capable of. He has shown you the monsters they carry inside them. And then he has shown you that they choose, every day, to keep those monsters chained. The ancient being turned to address everyone present. A species that can do anything and chooses to do what is right, that is not cowardice. That is strength beyond your comprehension. The Kalori fight because it is in their nature. The Bernaki trade because it is in their nature. Humans choose. They choose to be peaceful despite every instinct telling them to destroy. That choice is harder than any battle you have ever fought. Paleth looked at Drothax one final time. You call them cowards because they will not fight. I call them the only species in this council that understands what true courage means. The observer returned to the shadows without another word. The chamber erupted. Species that had been silent began arguing loudly. Drothax was shouting at his allies. The neutral species were conferring rapidly. The motion to designate humans as non-combat was suddenly in serious trouble. Right stood calmly in the center of the chaos he had unleashed. Reyes moved to his side. Did you plan for that? She whispered. No, Right admitted. Paleth has their own reasons for everything they do. What happens now? Right watched as Drothax's coalition began to fracture. Species that had laughed at humans an hour ago were now looking at them with something new in their eyes. Not friendship, perhaps, but respect. Now we find out if telling the truth was enough, Right said. Call for the vote. The vote took 3 hours, not because the outcome was uncertain. After the first hour, it was clear that Drothax's motion would fail. But council procedure required every species to formally register their position, and 47 species meant 47 statements. The Mivari voted against the motion immediately, citing the data Right had presented. The Bernaki abstained, their many eyes watching humans with new wariness. The Torvani split their delegation, with the younger members voting against while the elders remained loyal to Drothax. Species that had laughed at humans that morning now spoke carefully, using phrases like reconsideration of evidence and previously incomplete understanding. When the final count was read, the motion to designate humans as a non-combat species failed by a margin of 32 to 15. Drothax did not wait for the formal closing of the session. He stormed out of the chamber with Admiral Garath and their closest allies. His scales darkened with fury. He said nothing to Wright as he passed, but the hatred in his eyes was clear. The chamber slowly emptied. Species that had never spoken to humans before now approached Wright with cautious questions. A young Branaki asked about human history archives. A Torvani general wanted to discuss military doctrine. Wright answered them all politely, but briefly. The exhaustion was catching up to him. When the chamber was nearly empty, Counselor Yeneth approached. Ambassador Wright, may I speak with you privately? Wright nodded, and they moved to a quiet corner while Reyes kept others at a distance. I have a question, Yeneth said. Do humans truly believe what you said today? That you are dangerous and choose to be peaceful? Wright considered the question carefully. Some of us do. Some of us want to believe we have moved past our violent nature entirely. Some of us think we should embrace it. He paused. Most of us are just trying to be better than we were yesterday. Yeneth's antennae moved thoughtfully. The Mavari have never struggled with internal violence the way you describe. We make decisions through consensus. The concept of one Mavari killing another is almost unthinkable. Then you are fortunate. Perhaps. Yeneth leaned closer. Or perhaps we have never been tested. You humans have looked into your own darkness and survived. That is something the Mavari have never had to do. The counselor straightened. Today you earned something rare, Ambassador. You earned Mavari respect through honesty about weakness. Yeneth left without waiting for a response. Wright was still processing this when Admiral Garath appeared in front of him. Reyes tensed, her hand moving toward her communicator, but Garath did not attack. He stood there, his massive form blocking the light, and studied Wright with an expression that was impossible to read. Your speech, Garath said finally. The part about training soldiers to accept surrender. You said humans have to be taught this. Yes. How? Wright blinked. He had expected threats or insults, not questions. It is part of basic training. Psychological conditioning. Rules of engagement drilled until they become instinct. And it works. Most of the time. Wright met the Admiral's eyes. Not always. We still have soldiers who cannot stop, who carry the violence home with them. We call it trauma, but that is just a word for what happens when the chains break. Garath was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded once, sharply, and walked away without another word. What was that about? Reyes asked, joining Wright. I have no idea. Maybe nothing. Maybe something. Wright rubbed his tired eyes. Let us get back to our quarters. I need to contact Earth. The human delegation chamber was quiet when they returned. The junior diplomats had already sent preliminary reports home, and now they waited nervously for the official response that IT came within the hour. A direct message from the human government. Eyes only for the ambassador. Wright read it twice. What does it say? Reyes asked. Mixed reactions. Wright set down his tablet. Some leaders are proud. They say I defended humanity well. Others are furious. They say I revealed too much, made us look unstable, gave our enemies information they can use against us. What do you think? Wright walked to the window. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, billions of humans were living their lives, unaware of what had happened in this chamber today. I think we told the truth, he said. For the first time in 12 years of council membership, we stopped pretending to be something we are not. The galaxy knows now. They know what we were. They know what we could become. Is that a good thing? I do not know. Wright turned to face her. But it is honest. And maybe that is what we needed. To stop hiding and start proving that we mean what we say. A soft chime indicated a visitor at the door. Reyes checked and found Observer Paleth waiting outside. The ancient being entered and stood before Wright. You did well today, Ambassador. I had help. Wright inclined his head. Thank you for speaking. I spoke because it was time for certain truths to be heard. Paleth's dark eyes seemed to hold galaxies within them. The Council has new understanding now. Use it wisely. How? Paleth moved toward the door. You showed them your monsters. Now show them what you are building instead. Not with words this time. With actions. Every day you choose peace proves your speech was not empty. Every conflict you resolve without violence proves humans can be what they claim. The observer paused at the threshold. It will take time. Years. Generations. But you have started something today that cannot be undone. Make sure it ends well. Paleth vanished into the corridor. Wright stood at the window for a long time after that. Reyes joined him, and they watched the stars together. What happens now? She asked. Now we go back to work. Wright straightened his shoulders. pushing away the exhaustion. Tomorrow there will be new negotiations, new conflicts to prevent, new opportunities to prove we meant what we said. And if we fail, Wright smiled tiredly, then we try again. That is what being human means, Anna. We fall down. We make terrible mistakes. And then we get up and try to do better. He turned away from the window. The galaxy knows what we are now. The rest of our lives are about proving what we can become. Outside, the stars continued to burn. And somewhere in that vast darkness, 47 species were thinking about humans in a way they never had before. Not as weaklings to be mocked, not as predators to be feared, but as something new. Something they had never encountered. A species that had looked into its own abyss and decided to climb out.